Today, we're talking about the challenges that come from doing youth ministry in a church that is aging.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Ministry Coach Podcast, the coach for the coachless in youth ministry. My name is Jeff Lascola. This is
Kristen Lascola.
And this is an interesting topic we're covering today because I think it resonates with a lot of people that are called to be a youth pastor in a church of all older people.
Yeah, and the episode idea came from a real life email we got from a listener who had a question just saying like, look, my church is mostly older people. My youth group is like 5 or 6 kids. How do I grow in that kind of environment? And that is, like you said, probably a pretty typical scenario for a lot of youth pastors, that you just find yourself in, dare I say, a dying church.
Too far.
Too far? Well, okay, here's...
Because the people who are attending are dying? That's what I thought you meant.
Potato, kind of, both. Like, it's a dying church, meaning that there's no
injection
new
of
life.
Youth. Yeah.
And it's aging. Like the people that are there, like if the median age of your church continues to increase, your church is dying.
Yeah, no, it's
ultimately.
true.
And it doesn't mean we don't want older people in the church. We need every demographic represented. But the way that a church is going to grow and sustain energy and life and have new people continue to come and be interested, it's going to be hitting on that young family demographic. And if we don't have a lot of new young families coming in, then, I mean, and consistently, because eventually those young families
will
become
be old families.
So it's like that constant stream we need of those younger families. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, and how difficult it can be to do youth ministry in that kind of environment.
Right.
And I can't say I can speak from 100% experience, but I get where you're at, and I have some similar experiences that I can draw off of. Okay. And we're going to kind of talk about that today. So we're going to talk about this, what we can do, because at the Ministry Coach Podcast, we're all about what we can do. Let's do something.
Actionable steps.
Yeah.
Practical steps.
Nobody wants to talk theory. Who cares? Doesn't help us. So we're going to talk about what we can do on a macro level and what we can do on a micro level. And I'm going to start with macro because that is like the long-term solution, I guess, for this kind of problem. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's a problem. So Carey Nieuwhof, I'm listening on Audible right now to one of his books. It's amazing. If you haven't picked it up, please do. It's called Lasting Impact. And he asks a really interesting question. And he says, do teenagers want to attend your weekend services? If not, why not? And he said that will tell you, that will be a very big indicator for if your church is aging. Do we have a weekend service that teenagers would like to attend? And he, I think, picks that age because a teenager could hit on maybe like a young family, people with younger kids, people with a little bit older kids, but kind of that teenage, not that it's like everyone has to come wearing like weird jeans and crop tops, but I mean, like, is this a service that a teenager would be excited to attend? Yeah. And drawing on my past experience, you know, we're at a campus of a larger church, and that campus was not growing for a very long time. And I wouldn't say it was like all old people. I think that was like an easy excuse. But when you really looked around, you're like, well, it's not all old people. I would say every demographic here is represented. But there were some underlying issues that contributed to our stagnation that kept us from growing. So before you jump in to ask this question, is it really all old people, because I've been to churches where it literally is all old people. And it was like a record scratch when I walked in, and it was like, oh, everyone turned around and looked, and they were all very, hi, hello, like very sweet and very excited. But I realized, like, I don't know, like this probably isn't going to be a long-term fit for me.
Right.
And so if you're asking yourself that question, is that a cop-out saying it's all old people? But is it?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're like, yes, Kristen, I ran the numbers. We looked at the demographic. We've looked at all the people coming to church. It's all
medium
old.
age is death.
Yeah. So I think that would be a good place to start to see, okay, well, are there some other underlying health issues? Now, it's kind of goes hand in hand, because if it is all old people, there are some underlying health issues in the church. Why aren't young people coming? So here's where we're going to get to work on a macro level. This is going to take a little bit of courage on your part as a youth pastor to help your church overall identify some of the core issues that might be going on. Because chances are, if everyone in your church is old, your senior pastor is old. That usually goes hand in hand. And those are the kind of people sometimes that are like, everything's fine. It's all fine. We're all fine. And you as a young person or someone leading young people know, well, it's not all fine, because we're very lopsided one way or another. So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest you putting on some courage and asking some of the really hard questions at your next staff meeting, or if you don't have a staff meeting, then calling a meeting with your senior pastor to let him know or her know your observations of what you see going on, and maybe some ways that you guys can join together to start addressing it. This is like mission save your dying church, should you choose to accept it. Because like I said, this is going to be a long-term solution. And if you're committed to this church, to this organization, to this place, and you feel called here, then get ready to do some work. If you're like, nope, I see myself on the 12-month plan and I'm ready to bounce out of here as soon as I can, then I wouldn't really suggest getting into all this nitty gritty. But if you're like, no, like, who's going to save this church?
Right.
It's got to be me. So here's what I would suggest. Asking that question that Carey Nieuwhof asks, do teenagers want to attend our weekend services? And if not, why not? And there could be a lot of reasons going on at your church. Better yet, why don't you suggest that the senior pastor, if you could be so bold, and you and the staff all together, let's do a group project, read Lasting Impact by Carey Nieuwhof, or read Growing Young by Powell. And those two books really address what some underlying health issues of churches that are not growing might be. And they do address the issue of age, especially growing young, and how you do leadership. Are we giving leadership away to young people, or is every person who's on the stage in some capacity of visible leadership old? And that is like a big red flag in a church that is trying to get in young families. Well, if it's all old people who are visible, good luck. And another dead giveaway is if you have a church that's not actively prioritizing children's and youth, that's another sign of a dying church. And then some other questions to ask yourself. What is our music like? What are our music options like? What is worship like? What we've noticed is that if we go current and go young, the old people miss a little bit of like, oh, I remember when we used to sing this or that or whatever. They get over it and they move on and they still come. But a young person checking out a church, window shopping, trying to see if something is a good fit for their family, if they walk in and you're opening a hymn book, unless they're that particular brand of person, which there are, but most of the time the young families want something that they know and recognize. And I cannot tell you how powerful music can be to bridge a gap of language, of just like, as second you hear a song you recognize or know or love, it's like, oh, like it can just feel like home.
Yeah.
And so you want to be really careful. And I think there's a pride issue, if I could go there, to say like, we only do hymns. And it's like, why? At one point, hymns were new.
Right.
So just because something is old, and I think Jesus would totally back me on this, just because something is old does not mean it's spiritual.
Right.
So I think it's our pride and preference, actually, that get in the way.
Yeah.
I was just studying the Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus says so many times, you've heard it said, but I tell you this. You've heard it said, but I tell you this, because people were getting stuck in their religiosity from way, way back. And it's like, well, this is the way we do things,
Right.
and this is the way it's been done. And he's like, yeah, but I'm telling you, it's not about that anymore. It's about your heart. And I love that because he doesn't let them off the hook of like, well, hymns are holy. It's like, but all worship is holy if it's scripturally. I'm not even gonna try on that.
People take
scripturally based.
hymn books, like there's the Bible and then there's the hymnal, and it's like they were both written by the Lord.
Right.
It's like, well, the hymnal came probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years afterwards.
Most of them from like the 1700s,
or
which
later.
like, Kai. So it's one of those things where I think we have to be willing, if your church is going to grow, you have to be willing to give up preferences, old preferences, to reach who you're trying to reach, you know, without compromising scripture. I mean, that's a given. Don't get weird about that.
Right.
It's as long as it's scripturally based and it's true and it points people to Jesus. We're not saying, you know, like change everything to fit whatever the culture wants to hear. Like, no, we would never adulterate the gospel. But I'm saying your delivery method needs to be culturally relevant. It really does.
What do you think about how, I mean, a lot of churches will do this if they're big enough, but they'll do the multiple services where it's traditional and then
Great
contemporary.
idea.
Okay.
Love it. So,
But what if you're not big enough to split?
then go young. Always.
I agree with that because I don't think, well, I shouldn't say anybody. I think most people are always okay with going younger, whether it be fashion,
Yes.
trends, anything like that. It's very rare, except for like little kids who are like, I want to be older, you know,
Yeah.
but that they're even talking like older as in 15.
The
or-
little kids want hymns. They want to be old.
So I always feel like you're always safe going. I mean, we're not talking about like really young, but like I guess we would call it age appropriate young.
Yeah.
Where it would be like relevant, you know.
Sure.
So like it's not going to be, if you have a 75-year-old grandma, she's not going to be wearing her crop top and ripped jeans and all that stuff. But
we do know one.
We do.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you're talking. True. Most of the time, that's not the case. But yeah, I think everyone is okay with. No one wants to feel older.
Yeah.
Again, unless you're 10 and you want to be 16.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, music is just one of the things, but I think that is a pretty initial, like, all right, are we in or are we out? And
Right.
I think people make some judgments pretty quick based on that. The other thing, you know, especially with what we've been going through with the pandemic and stuff, what's your online presence like? You know, I had a friend recommending a church and I looked at their website and it was immediately no. And that is so shallow and so judgmental, but it looked like it was stuck in 1970.
Yeah.
And I just like couldn't see myself there just based on their website. And so I watched a little clip of the teaching and, you know, the pastor, he was teaching the Bible. So
Right.
it was great, but he just seemed so out of touch and everything just seemed like it was like from the past.
Right.
And I don't know, it just didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
And so those are the things of like, well, when people window shop your church, is it like, no, but if they got here, they won't.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, it's such a shallow, silly thing. And when we really get to the heart of it, like, you wouldn't go to a church because you didn't like their website. Like, what kind of Christian are you? But we have to account for human nature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, how are we going to get the gospel to you? If we have to account for human nature and that they like things to look relevant and updated, account for it. It's not unspiritual. So take a look at your website because that is probably the first step. If you want to go even younger, the first step for a lot of people is I always look up churches on their Instagram. I'm like, oh, I wonder what like service projects they're doing or, you know, because people take pictures of cool stuff that their church does. So I always check out a church's Instagram. Does your church have a social media presence? You know, And if you guys are really old, you probably don't. But those are the kinds of things that might keep you stuck in this time warp without new families coming through, because that's how they're going to see you first before they walk in the door. So, I mean, that counts for a whole lot. Ambiance. That's another thing. So when people walk in the door, does it feel old, or does it feel relevant and updated and new? Or is it like just has that old stuffy stuck feeling? But there's so many things, you know, finding someone who's good at design and just saying, okay, look at our lobby. Like, tell me 5 things that would freshen this place up, and just do it. And I know you're the youth pastor, and so you're like probably thinking this stuff isn't your job. But if you're at a small church where you have 5 or 6 kids, trust me, it's your job, because everything is your job when you're at a church that small. And that's how you build in value to yourself anyways. So you start to see your role outside of just youth ministry. If you care about this church, and if you care about the direction it's going and that it has a future and you want to have a future there, why not? I mean, I remember when our church was tiny, I went to our campus pastor. I'm like, we need new pots for these plants. Like, these plants are so pretty. Like, this could make our entryway look so much better. Like, can I go to Home Depot and buy some stuff? And he's like, okay. And a lot of times senior pastors, it's not like they're like, no, don't update it. Most of the time, A, they don't care, or B, they don't have a passion or a flair for it. And so they're like, if someone else wants to update, go for it, you know? So where can you insert yourself in that ambiance? Because that's a big thing. Like, let's assume we get past the website and the social media and the reputation and all of that, and they actually do walk through the door.
What's their experience
the first thing that they see?
We interviewed this is going a ways back, but how to build community and culture in your ministry with Pastor Jeff Moores, who's located in Oceanside, California, which is down the road from us. Rhythm Church. They bought a church that was really old, and it was, you know, stained glass windows and the pews and stuff like that. And it was very dated. He has a great eye for design and surrounds himself with people that also do. And they made it so cool. Like, that would be a church worth doing a video walkthrough.
Yeah.
I should tell him he needs to do that. But there was the example, because you might be thinking, hey, this is the building we have. We just can't make it look, you know, up to date or whatever. It's like, no way.
The person with the right eye. I mean, like someone like Jeff, or, you know, if just someone, and they probably wouldn't even charge you, just someone coming in and looking, saying, oh, this, that, you know, and it could be an instant facelift, you know, like that. You know, the other thing I was thinking too is events geared toward young families. You know, like we would do things on Saturday nights and make sure we had bounce houses and barbecues and things like that families would enjoy coming early to. And so, like, when you do events with your church, like what demographic, because you can't hit every single one in one event, maybe a little bit of everything, but keeping that demographic in mind, that we want people with kids to want to come to this. And that's how your church is going to continue to grow, like we said. So here's the thing. I would recommend reading those 2 books. And then I would also recommend stalking other churches. You know, like how you were saying, oh, it would be great if you could see Jeff's church, like on a walkthrough or whatever. When we were struggling aesthetically, we went and visited a ton of youth ministries, and I would look at their youth rooms and get ideas and write stuff down and change stuff and come back. And it was not an overnight change. It took a long time. That's why I'm saying all this stuff is macro. So it's going to be for the long haul. You have to put in the time, the money, the research, the patience, the learning, but it pays huge if the whole team can get on board. And I think that's where we have to start. Is your job as the one listening, as the one with the passion or the burden or the problem. You're the one who's identified, like, something needs to change here. You've got to get everyone on board. You know?
And chances are they probably hired you because they're like, hey, you're young, you have energy, bring the young people to our church. And I think they kind of think they're winding you up and setting you off. But in the same time, it's like, part of your job is then going back to them to say, well, you guys need to be on board with this too.
Yeah, like we're going to do this together.
Right.
We're on all in this together.
Okay, I think you've sung this before, and it's High School Musical.
It is.
See, I learned.
Oh, you're getting young, dude.
High School Musical.
Name one actor or actress.
Oh, Zac Efron.
Whoa.
Yeah. I can't tell you if it is a movie or a TV show.
How old did I sound when I went,
oh, dear. Yeah, I know of it. I don't know it, though. I've never seen it, so... Moving on.
Okay. All right. Let's
also we'll link those books in the description below, whether you're listening on the podcast or on YouTube. They'll be in the description below, so you can just click on that and you can go right to Amazon and pick up one of those books. Carey Powell and Carey Nieuwhof.
Wow, good memory.
Yeah.
I think Carey Powell maybe co-wrote it with some people, but that's the one I remember because I'm a big Carey Powell fan. Okay, so micro, what can you do in your own little world? So while you're trying to get them, come on, guys, like we got to grow this church and we're going to be great and blah, blah, blah. What are you doing in your own little youth ministry world? So now we're going to talk on that micro level like we were talking about. So number one, if the kids aren't coming to you, go to the kids. Go to school. Go. Well, here's the thing. If you can start a Christian club on one of the campuses, that is a sure. Oh, and it's even better when it's on your youth group night. So like we're on Tuesday. When I would go to Christian club at our main junior high on Tuesdays at lunch, all the kids were like, Kristen. I'd be like, hey guys, hey. And then they would be like, this is my friend, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, hey, you should come to Chaos tonight. And they'd be like, okay. And it was so cool because then I'd be like, see you tonight. And they'd be like, see you tonight.
Yeah.
And so it was like awesome. And I was on campus. I was with all the kids and they were so excited to have me on their turf. And after COVID, our Christian club situation got weird. So I need to jump back into that. But go to them. If you don't have a Christian club at one of your main middle schools or high schools, you could start one. You could talk. You need one teacher who's like a fan.
It might be different based on where you're at, but that's how it is out here.
Yeah, like you need one teacher who's willing to host and kind of champion you a little bit. So, and then get on. So you could just go to the school office and just start a conversation and see how that goes. And then games. So if you live in a town where football games are important or performances, recitals, whatever, if you can find a couple things a month to show up to that are part of the community and just start meeting people, like politician style, I guess, like just start shaking hands and like getting to know people, making connections and getting your face out there and going to where the kids are. If you have a local skate park, man, there's been one of my leaders, his son is a big skateboarder and they're at the skate park like every weekend. And they've brought so many boys from the skate park to youth group because they love it. And that's where they're spending their time, or like the beach, like surfing, they'll invite other kids and stuff like that. So go to where the kids are. And then number two, if you live in a town where people are looking for things to do on Friday nights, I think Friday nights is a big win, especially for middle school because they don't drive and they always want something to do. So if you can have Friday night events, that is where they'll invite their friends because their friends will go home with them from school and then come to your event that night. And there's all kinds of events you can do on Friday night. You can pair it with the football games in your town, do the fifth quarter pizza dodgeball thing, pretty classic.
Good for you knowing that there is 4 quarters in a football game and that this would be
I was a cheerleader,
quarter.
Jeff.
Yeah, but do cheerleaders really know what's going on?
You're so sportsist. Yes, we kind of did.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference between offense and defense took me a real long time, but
it's total side note, but this is my favorite part of cheerleaders. I've told you this before, but have you ever had, and I'm not comparing cheerleaders to dogs, so trust me.
I don't know if I like
but
where
essentially
this is
it's
going.
the same thing. When you have a dog and you have like a tennis ball and you like pretend to throw it and the dog runs down and it's like looking around, like where'd it go? But you didn't really throw it and then it kind of like comes back like, wait, what just happened? Whenever there is like a touchdown and the cheerleaders are, and they start running down towards the end zone to do whatever formation, but they don't realize there was a penalty and it got called back. They always get down to the end zone. They're just kind of like, deer in headlights, like, wait, what happened? And then they kind of just sheepishly run back. They're like, I don't know what just happened. I thought we scored. Yay, sports.
That's why competitive cheerleading is so much better, because then you don't have to watch the game. You just
competitive cheerleading is legit. That's intense. Okay.
So anyways, fifth quarter, thanks for interrupting. Or like a glow night, or like a big video game tournament. Like, I don't know if you have the budget, but renting the video game trucks is pretty legit. Laser tag stuff. There's all kinds of stuff you can rent and do. And if people are paying, then all of a sudden you have a budget. Like for my glow night, I charge like $7 and they get all the stuff and food. I mean, you can do that stuff pretty cheap. So do Friday night events, especially if you're middle school. So also serving. So serving outside the church and inside the church, I think, is a really great way to get people hooked because people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so serving out in the community, I feel like, draws people to your church, creates a buzz. Now we're going back kind of to the macro level, like making a name for your church in your community. But then like on that micro level inside, if you only have 5 or 6 students, where are they serving? So like, those are the kids that, man, like, I feel like, especially in junior high, they really start to learn their giftedness when you put some responsibility in their hands, and then they love church. And kids who love church will bring other kids. And so there's so many episodes we've done on that kind of thing. And so you can go back and listen to like, okay, well, why aren't people inviting their friends to your youth group? But all that to say for today is, are you really pushing people to serve? Because that's what makes that youth group come alive, I guess, a little bit, is because people are passionate. And then lastly, again, we've done many an episode on this, but make sure you're doing small groups. Unless you have a youth group of like 1 or 2, you could do small groups.
The whole thing is a small group.
Well, and I've noticed kids are more likely to invite their friends to a small group. You know what I mean? I think that, like, when they know they have a small group, instead of just staying in the big group the whole time, and there's that weird boy and like, I don't want to talk about my prayer requests. But then when you break it down to just a couple of kids or a smaller group, people start to feel more comfortable. And I think it does foster the invite thing. So above all, I guess the challenge really is this where God has called you? And I think we can very easily base our own value and effectiveness off of the numbers. And it really is a head game, and it might make it seem, well, I must not be doing a good job. I don't know. Maybe not. But what I do know is that everybody wants to be seen, known, and loved. And if you have 5 or 6 right now who need to be seen, known, and loved, then that should be your passion. And when you start doing everything you can to, create a healthy environment for discipleship and for growth, it'll come when it's time.
Right.
Or not. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know that healthy things do grow, but I also have to wonder, I think we've talked about this before, how large Jesus's youth group would have been. I just feel like if he's charged you with 5 or 6, like, who's to say that it's supposed to go from 5 to 50? Right. Maybe it will, and maybe it is supposed to, but just don't lose sight of who is right in front of you at the moment. And then here is the big challenge: be faithful. So just be faithful with that. And, I always think of Jesus's words, you were faithful with a little, and then you can be faithful with much. But that timetable is not up to us.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that the person down the street with 100 kids is super faithful. Like, we've seen unhealthy things that are big, and the Holy Spirit is the one that makes things grow, and God knows what's truly healthy and what's not. But your job is to not worry about all that, is to be faithful and to do the best possible job you can on a macro and a micro level, and trust that God has put you here for such a time as this. for these particular people at this particular time in this particular church. I don't know why you're there. I didn't know why I was at my place either for a really long time. And it was just the day in, day out, faithful service so that you could hear well done at the end. And that's really the point, is no matter the size of your youth group, deep down in your heart, do you think Jesus would say, well done? And then those times too of just relying on the Holy Spirit, praying the heck out of your youth group. You know, I think we can really,
which you should do regardless of if it's a smaller or larger one.
But I feel like we can really try to do it on our own strength and think like, oh, I got to sharpen my leadership skills. And that's what we talk about a ton on this podcast, but never neglecting, but it's also spiritual, you know, but we work hard and we try our best because we care a whole lot. And then we trust that the Holy Spirit is really doing the heavy lifting for us.
Yeah, definitely pour into those people who are coming and who God has put into your life. And don't ever, one time someone said, never say the phrase like, how come nobody's here? Or where is everybody? Because what does that say about the people who are there?
Right.
So celebrate those who are there. In your head, you can wonder, where is the rest of these people?
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't come across well when you have 5 or 6 and you go, where is everybody?
And that's, like you said, the thought that you have in your, and I've been there of just like, I remember having events and just praying like, God, just please let someone show up. Please let them show up. Please let them show up. Because as a youth pastor, it's just this like, big like letdown when it's like I did all this and nobody even came. What is wrong with this thing? It's not working. And it really might not be you. There could be so many factors at play. Right. And that's why you've really got to stick in there for the long haul, because you don't know what it is. Right. And you just got to work and chip away at like, all right, is it the ambiance? Okay. Is it the teaching? Okay. Is it, we need more Holy Spirit here? Is it, what is it? I don't know. Right. Is our church not fun? Is it old? What is the problem? And you're going to need some time to figure that out.
Yeah. You can do this. Whoa. You can do this. Speaking of being
this. You can do this.
I would probably normally edit that out, but I'm going to leave it in. That was awesome. I'm
just
coming,
makes you so human.
I'm coming off
so
being
relevant.
sick, so that's probably also why my voice sounds a lot deeper than normal. Yeah, that's pretty rad. All right, let's do a question of the day.
Question of the day.
It is, and I want you guys to answer this too in the comment section of YouTube. So, if you were to live in one of the Disney animated films, which one would you want to live in? And it doesn't mean like all the, like if there's,
villains.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. If there's villains and stuff like that, doesn't mean that they're there. It's just the actual
setting.
town and or city or whatever it is. Which one would you pick?
Okay, so my initial response is Moana, because when I watch it and I see the water and the island life, I'm like,
it's also a little colder out right now, and for some of you, I'm sure it's a lot colder. So looking at the warm water and the beaches looks like a lot of fun.
Just so pretty, and they just seem so like chill. I like it. But then all of a sudden I'm like, but if Belle, then I could live in France, and it was such a cute little town. But I think I definitely would have to go with Moana. Belle's second choice.
Okay, I'm going with Tangled, Rapunzel. I had to look it up, but the town's name is Corona.
Okay.
Which is
so
weird.
You're talking about not
it.
where the snuggly duckling is. You're talking about where the castle is.
Like that world.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the castle, and because it just looked so green and lush and inviting, and it looked like the weather would be very mild and enjoyable. Mm-hmm. So that's really all I care about. All right, we're going to do a comment of the day, community comment of the day. This is from Natalie Raquena, who is from Belize.
Wow,
cool.
All the way from Belize?
Yeah.
That's
and
rad.
She says, thanks again for another blessed, wisdom-filled session. I agree with the review. You know how to speak clear, and examples used are so practical that we can relate to. It's always fun to listen and learn from both of you. Thanks for not sugarcoating the truth and for speaking on issues that are reality and should not be in the body of Christ. The Lord bless your heart and continue to renew your strength.
Whoa.
Thank you, Natalie. That's awesome.
Talking about clear communication, that was like a very powerful comment.
Yeah,
like she just like communicated that very well.
So thank you guys. Thank you, Natalie. And thank you guys for watching and listening. And we will see you next time.